Okay, so I've done a lot of these videos on characters that I think people should be looking at just for like inspiration. And I kind of thought, you know what? I've mostly been doing mine on comic book characters and video games, anime and manga. Not counting the one about the Fets. And I thought, why don't I pick some that I've recently seen that I thought, yeah, it's a good thing to take inspiration from. One of them is a character from the Highlander called the Kurgan. And he is the type of villain, antagonist, or whatever, that I kind of miss. He's just unrepentingly evil as fuck. And I like that. Like, I miss antagonists and villains who were just evil. They weren't misunderstood or they had a bad life. So we should feel sorry for them and they're not completely evil and there's no real bad guy or good guy. Like, I'm sick of that moral gray area bullshit when it comes to the Kurgan. Like, he is evil. Now, from what little I've read about him on the wiki, his background is not great. I mean, the Kurgans weren't the nicest of people. According to Ramirez, they would throw children to fight dogs for entertainment. And they would watch the children fight the dogs. I believe this actually happened to the Kurgan when he was a kid. Like, when I was looking him up on the wiki, it actually had an image from a comic of him actually fighting dogs. Also, he's a Russian. They're very scary people. I mean, just look at their president. Like, if you told me I had to be in the same room as Vladimir Lenin, I'd probably piss myself. Like, that guy is scary as fuck. Anyway, the Kurgan is, like, insane, depraved, mad, and not in the angry kind of way. Remorseless, ruthless, has no conscience, no remorse. And some of these things I've probably said more than once. And I like these things about him. Like, he's left over from a time when we were actually allowed to have actual villains. Excuse me. And none of this moral bullshit. It was just like things, like back then there was actually a binary morality. You were a good guy or a bad guy. And the Kurgan was definitely a bad guy. But he was kind of the worst kind of bad guy. He was insane in a funny way. He was crazy. Like, there's a lot of things to like about it. I think this kind of boils down to Clancy Brown's acting. Like, he really sold that character for me. Like, he was probably like one of my two favorite characters in that movie. No, actually, no, three. There was him, Christopher Lambert, and Sean Connery. Sorry, I don't know why I was forgetting his name. Like, I liked all three of their characters. They were the highlight of the movie for me. The other characters I didn't give a shit about. The only one from Highlander that I actually liked other than them was Angus, believe it or not. Now, there's a good cousin, or relative, or kinsman, or whatever. And, yeah, the Kurgan is just messed up, dark, very dark. And, yeah, like, there's a lot of things I want to talk about with him, but, yeah, mainly he is he is what I think a villain should be. He is, like, a highlight of the movie and a subject of interest. You never always know a lot about him. You just get, like, the basic information. And you can also judge him based on how he conducts himself and his actions. And, yeah, he has some really good lines. Like, that's one of the appeals of villains, is they have some of the best lines. And actually, that's all I can say for now. Now, one of the things I really like about the Kurgan the most throughout the Highlander movie is his connection to Connor MacLeod, in that he hunted him down, was going to kill him, failed to do so, and merely just activate his immortal abilities, and actually tries to finish the job another time, but Ramirez hides him, and he can't find MacLeod, so he just leaves. And raped his wife Heather, although Heather kept quiet about this. He killed Ramirez, his mentor. taunts him. Hundreds of years later, finds him. He's actually kind of happy to finally see him. He's like, "Nice to see you again, McLeod." Then he proceeds to bash his head into a pipe. Tortures his new love interest, whose name I forget. And yeah, he just gives McLeod a reason to hate him. And it's like a classic dynamic between hero and villain. The hero thinks the villain is scum. The villain really doesn't care what he thinks, although he does kind of defend himself somewhat, saying Ramirez was an elitist snob. Like, that's the closest he gets to defending himself. Like, this is a guy who just... Like, I think he just fucks with people for shits and giggles. But, yeah, the dynamic between him and McLeod is definitely very interesting whenever I see it up front, because the Kurgan is very honest about what he wants from McLeod. McLeod actually asks him this, and he's like, "Your head and the prize." Yeah, that is pretty much the gist of it. So I kind of I do like it when an antagonist and protagonist, or protagonist and a villain, do have a better dynamic like this, when it's just, oh, they actually have a mutual understanding, or there's more to the villain. Sometimes I like that gray area shit, but not the Kurgan. He's evil. Nothing more, and McLeod recognizes this and doesn't even try to reason with him. He's like the one immortal McLeod does not want to reason with. He would prefer just to cut his head off and be done with him. Or not deal with him altogether because he considers him slime. And says so to his face. And the Kurgan, well, he just prefers to stir the shit between him and McLeod. Which I like. It's just like, neither one of them really gives a shit what the other thinks. It's just, well, the Kurgan needs him dead. McLeod has to kill him eventually. And things transpire to where it is eventually facilitated. He also makes a good contrast with McLeod. Like, McLeod is more or less a good person. Like, the centuries have made him cynical and bitter, but he's still a good person underneath. The Kurgan, by contrast, he is the opposite. He is messed up in the head, depraved. He has no respect for humanity, and would probably lead humanity to thousands of years of darkness if he ever won the prize. And they both are kind of self-serving in a way. Well, no, the Kurgan is mainly self-serving. He's also very antisocial. McLeod is capable of social interactions. It's just he doesn't grab people by the throat if things don't go his way. The Kurgan does do that. Also, the Kurgan's creepy, licks the hand of a priest, does other unsavory stuff. Also has a sword that he can take apart and put back together, which I actually thought that was kind of cool. But anyway, that is like kind of the main thing. Is I like the compare and contrast between these two, in that, but they don't have a lot in common. The only thing they have in common is that they're immortals. That is it. They share no common trauma or past experience, other than the Kurgan trying to kill him and killing his mentor Ramirez. That's it. Like, it's a pretty simple back and forth between them. There's also the factor of mystery in the movie. I haven't read any of the expanded material of the Highlander. I do want to get my hands on the Kurgan comic, just to read that alone. The art looks pretty good. But, like, the only information you get on the Kurgan is he's from Russia, and he comes from a people called the Kurgans, who are very tough people. Like, Ramirez says they throw children into fighting pits and force them to fight dogs, and they watch it for entertainment. That is how ruthless the Kurgans were. And the Kurgan, I think, is the last of them. He's the last one still alive because he outlived all of them. And I think at one point he was actually thrown into the dog pits himself, and he survived. But, other than that, you never really learn much about him, just that he's ruthless. He hunts other immortals. And at one point he had a deal with a guy, I believe his name was Murdoch. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, the protagonist Connor was a part of a clan called Clan MacLeod from the Highlands of Scotland. They went to war with another clan, I forget their name. All I know about them is their leader would shout death to the MacLeods. Now, the Kurgan had a deal with their leader Murdoch. He helped them in this fight in exchange for him being able to get his hands on Connor, who he knew was an immortal who had yet to activate his immortal abilities. But you have no idea how he came to find out how do you even know to come to Scotland to find out MacLeod was an immortal? Maybe he could. I mean, it's said that immortals have an ability to sense each other. Like, those who have activated their immortal abilities, they have the ability to sense other immortals, and even immortals who have not activated their abilities. So that could be one thing. And you never know how long he's known Murdoch. How did he know to go to Murdoch? Maybe he asked around, but I would think people would be like, I'm pretty sure someone in MacLeod would have noticed some big guy who has a bear skull for a helmet asking questions. Or maybe he had associates with him who helped him. I mean, it's just, you don't know. Like, there's room for mystery and stuff to be left to your imagination, which I like. Like, the only thing we know about the Kurgan for sure is he's a mercenary, and he's an immortal like the MacLeod and Ramiro. So you have an explanation for why he is as skilled as the way he is. I think I heard one time he was pals with Genghis Khan, so he's been involved with wars. There's also that. Although that's in the expanded material, so sticking just to the confines of the movie, like, there's lots of information you don't know about him, which I like. I like it when there's stuff left up to the imagination. Like, the bits of information it gives you is just the important, like, semi-important stuff. Like, you didn't actually need to know where the Kurgan comes from. It just gives you some background information on him and why he's the way he is, kind of. Or it gives you a hint as to why he is the way he is. You also learn that if he wins the prize, humanity is screwed. Like, I would hate to be in humanity if that guy won the prize. Thankfully, he lost. But yeah, no, like, there is not as much information given as some villains are given now. Well, I think actually most villains, if you want to learn about them, you have to read expanded material. So in some ways, he's similar to villains now, except he's an actual villain. There's no gray morality bullshit. And yeah, I like that element of, I like how you're given limited information on, which kind of leaves you wanting to know more, which then gives you incentive to buy the expanded material. Ruthlessness. The Kurgan is probably, well, actually, no, he is the most ruthless immortal there is. Like, there's only one other immortal that you see trying to kill other immortals in the Highlander, and that's, I think it was a Polish guy in his 40s. I think it was either Vizier or Castigier. Hard to remember. It was a forgettable name. It sounded unique, though. And yeah, the Kurgan gives zero fucks about who you are. He will kill you regardless. You can be a man, a woman, a child. He'll probably kill you. Like, if you get in his way, you are a dead man. If he wants you dead, you are a dead man. If he has the thought of killing you will probably benefit him in some way, he will kill you. I mean, this guy attacked MacLeod before he even knew what he was, stabbed him, and as he was dying was preparing to cut off his... Well, as Connor MacLeod thought he was dying, he was preparing to cut off his head, and only failed because his cousins... I think it was... I know one of them was called Angus. I want to say the other one was called McDougal, but I might have that name wrong. Like, that sounds like too Scottish of a name to be right. Actually, no, I think McDougal might be a last name. But anyway, yeah, he killed Ramirez while he was trying to find MacLeod. Again, raped MacLeod's wife, Heather. And yeah, no, he is a bastard. He is a unrelenting bastard. And not the good kind. Like, he relishes in being evil. There's no reasoning with him. There's no bargaining with him. If he thinks killing you will benefit... hell, he doesn't even have a problem with using people as bait. Like, hundreds of years after he tried to kill MacLeod the first time, he used his new girlfriend as bait by tying her up to a neon sign on the top of a building. And, yeah, there is little to humanize. There's a little room for ambiguity with him. It's just, he wants the prize, killing you gets it. And if you're mortal and he has to kill you, he will also do it. And he will do so with a smile on his face. Also, probably catching a semi while he does it. Probably overstand the obvious here, but the Kurgan's kind of off his rocker. Like, he is really crazy and depraved. Like, again, he licked a priest's hand. I think after the priest asked him to leave or did not make so much noise. I remember now. He plays chicken after he kidnaps MacLeod's new love interest. Like, he literally plays chicken. Like, at one point he lets go of the wheel and just closes his eyes with his hands. And he's just tormenting this woman. He ran one guy who was on a motorcycle off the road. He tried to destroy the neon sign he tethered to by cutting up the support beams to it. MacLeod tried to stop him, but it still came down eventually. She survived, but yeah, and he was really crazy. He says weird shit all the time. Like, a prostitute named Candy comes in. She's like, "I'm Candy," and he's like, "Of course you are." And then another time, after he killed an immortal, I believe it was Castigear, he went to this car of someone who was onlooking to him, receiving the quickening, grabs the husband, throws him out of the car, enters. The old woman is screaming, and he says, "Mom." I think he did anyway, and yeah, he's just crazy. He is very crazy, and he also has this one good, funny line. Well, not funny, but kind of insane line where he says, "I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away." Which kind of speaks to his mentality. It's just, this guy actually kind of comes off as a nihilist sometimes. Like, nothing is sacred to him. Nothing is beyond defiling or messing with. Like, nothing is taboo to him. He has no remorse, no restraint, no morals. It's just, if he wants to do it, he'll do it. He's basically like a Joe Biden. Or Hunter Biden. I'm sorry, that political joke kind of went on far. It's just, you see little restraint from him. I mean, you do kind of see this in modern antagonists and villains. Like, there are some who have poor impulse control. You can kind of see this in Klaus Michelson in the originals. Like, he had some impulse control, but he really struggled controlling his impulses if he was pissed off enough. The Kurgan, he doesn't get pissed off as far as I know. I think he just gets annoyed with people. And yeah, even when he's following an impulse, he still has a plan. So yeah, combine those two into it. He's insane. He's crazy. I think, like, this is probably one of the interesting things about the Highlander is the implications of living forever. I look at the Kurgan and I say, what if immortality drives you nuts? I think that's the case for the Kurgan. Like, MacLeod, he was just made bitter by it. The Kurgan, I think at some point, even if he had sanity, he lost it. Like, he really lost it and he never got it back. I was like, you know what? F this noise, F this morality. I'm doing what I want and I'm having a blast while I do it. And yeah, he looks like he's having the time of his life while he's messing with people or doing horrible things. And you see zero fucks from him. Like, zero fucks. And I like it. Again, this goes back to a very old school type of villain who's unremorseful, unrepentant, and it's just like, I will do to you as I please, and if you don't like it, tough titties. Like, that is the mentality from him, and I really like it. It's just like, I would actually like to write a villain like that one day, just of someone who is crazy, sort of nihilistic, because he comes off as a nihilist sometimes. Like, nothing is sacred. He seems to reject all moral principles, and he's kind of just off the cuff with. Like, I think I heard one time, like when he was chasing McCloud's current love interest in the movie, he was actually he actually had a lollipop or a popsicle in his mouth while he was doing it. Bust through a door, laughs maniacally, kills people on a whim, kills you if you get in his way. Like, one guy walked in on him as he killed an immortal, shot him full of holes. The Kurgan responded by stabbing that guy through with his sword. So, yeah, he's crazy. Like, there is a degree of sanity to him, but not by much. Like, it's like he contains the madness just enough until a certain thing allows him to release it all and have fun. I kind of think that Kurgan is kind of like, you know that one character you love to hate? I say that about the Kurgan, really. Like, he's someone who is built to be creepy and detestable. So, like Ramsay Bolton. Um, Another appeal is he kind of influenced, or a lot of the plot happens because of him. Like, well, not because of him. Like, Connor McLeod was going to become an immortal regardless of what he did, but he really set it up to where Connor McLeod would become an immortal in his physical prime. Another thing is, like, he's crazy. I like crazy characters. Like, you'd have no idea what they're going to do. That's kind of one of the reasons why I like the Joker. I mean, he'll either kill you or give you a stack of dollars. You don't know. He'll probably kill you, but you just don't know. Another thing is how kind of creepy he is. Like, this is a villain that is just not looking for sympathy. It's, I'm just doing what I like and I love. And what I love isn't that nice, but if you don't like it, oh well, I enjoy it. Like, I don't even think he cares if you have a problem with it. It's just, I'm gonna do what I want. If you don't like it, sue me. Of course, you'll be too dead to sue me, so never mind. He's also a type of villain that I think really causes the protagonist to improve or gives them motivation to do something. Because McLeod had no interest in, like, the game anymore. He was really just tired of it. And even though he hates the Kurgan, I do get the feeling that if the Kurgan hadn't mentioned what he did to his wife, McLeod might have just been willing to be like, yeah, no, I just really don't care. Like, he probably would have tried to put off with killing the maybe. I still get the like, he still thinks the Kurgan is slime in his own words. Well, no, Ramirez calls him that, and McLeod just agrees. So yeah, he's a good thing to contrast McLeod with, because as bad as McLeod's personality can be, compared to the Kurgan, he's a fucking saint. Another appeal is that sword he has. I love that sword. It's like a sword you can dismantle, put into a suitcase, and carry wherever you want in the modern day. And then when you get back to your hotel room, you can put it back together and go out on a killing spree. I just kill indiscriminately. And that doesn't make me a psychopath. I'm just saying I like my villains who are like that. And another thing is, he just seems to be having the time of his life when he's doing these things. Like, actually, another character I could compare him to would probably be Kai Parker, because Kai was a sociopath, and had no problem doing the most deplorable things, and he was having the time of his life while he did it. So, and for those of you who look up the names I've mentioned in this video, don't judge me. I watch weird stuff when I'm bored, which is almost always. And Yeah, that's the main. Oh, also I like his attire in the 1980s. It looks very Mad Max, to be perfectly honest. Like, it reminds me of the stuff Mad Max wore in Road Warrior. So think Mad Max attire with a crazy person who wields a sword and has skills to back it up, because, yeah, he's really deadly with that sword. And he can cut your head off in one swing. So he's very strong. Okay, just to wrap this one up, the takeaway with the Kurgan is villains don't need to be sympathetic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I sometimes like antagonists and villains who are sympathetic, but I miss the days when they were just badass, evil motherfuckers. Like, I miss those movies where we had those. Now everything is dark, gritty, complicated. It can't just be, this guy's evil, maybe he has some likable qualities to him, but he's still evil. Like, can we not go back to simpler times just for one day? But yeah, there's that. It helps to have a villain who's mentally off the reservation. And by that I mean, the Kurgan is obviously mentally unstable, or at the very least he gives that feeling. Like, I think that's one of the downsides to living for so long is, like, MacLeod is probably one of the immortals who I think has handled immortality well. The Kurgan, I'm assuming, did not handle it well. Because he had a pretty hard life, and to go back to my first point, like, I do feel sorry for the Kurgan based on, like, the comic or what little I've read about it. Like, he had a rough childhood, but that was it. And he did some messed up things in retaliation for that messed up childhood. But anyway, he always comes off as someone who is deranged, insane, crazy, and having a ball while he's doing it. And yeah, he's just off his rocker. He is physically and mentally imposing, which is something I think villains should be like. Even he doesn't have to be physically imposing, like still physically fit or some way. Like, don't make him like a svelte or a soy boy, I guess. Like, and you can still, like, you don't have to make him those things and make him mentally a threat, because there are people who are very masculine who are actually very intimidating mentally. But yeah, the Kurgan in some ways, he kind of reminds me of Bane from The Dark Knight. I want to say Returns, or the third Batman film by Chris Nolan. And the Bane was physically and mentally imposing and formidable. I liked that about him. Give a villain a good or memorable line. The Kurgan has this. He has probably one of my favorite lines in movies, which is, I think I've said this already, but I'll say it again. It's better to burn out than fade away. And he looks like a badass while he says it. Like, villains, they need to have good lines in movies. Either that or a good philosophy, but mainly good lines. And yeah, no, just give them really good lines. Like, I miss it when when villains had these good lines that were memorable and could be quoted. And yeah, it just feels like it's lacking. So, like, this is something I saw recently on Twitter where someone asked, remember the days when we had badass villains? This is something that factors into that. They had good dialogue. Now their dialogue sucks ass to a straw. Give the villain a connection to the protagonist, and by this I mean, like, not in a sympathetic way. I mean, the Kurgan and MacLeod do have a connection. The Kurgan more or less ruined MacLeod's life. He made him into an immortal. Like, he activated his immortal powers. Before that, MacLeod had lived a very normal life. And MacLeod has nothing but reasons to hate this guy ever since. Then the fact of he killed Ramirez, and then later, centuries later, he found out that he raped Heather. So there was that. Like, the connection doesn't always have to be, oh, we're alike or something. It doesn't have to be that. It can't just be, at one point these two met and they've influenced each other's lives in some regard. To the Kurgan, MacLeod is the one that got away. And I don't mean that in a romantic way. He is the one person he was unable to kill, And I have to imagine that irritated the Kurgan on some level. Like, this is a guy who probably takes pride in what he does, and McLeod just keeps getting away. And vice versa, the Kurgan, as I mentioned, has already influenced McLeod's life in some way. And he continues to intimidate him, well, tries to intimidate him. I think McLeod at that point, he just doesn't give a shit. And he's like, death isn't such a bad thing, now that I think about it. Or it sometimes feels like he has that thought, but he doesn't want the Kurgan to win. And give the protagonist reason to hate the villain. And we've already said why McLeod hates the Kurgan. One, he caused him to become an immortal. He more or less set his course earlier than it probably would have. He, again, raped his wife Heather, killed his mentor Ramirez, tormented his new girlfriend in the 1980s. Like, he's just a menacing shithead. This is a guy who delights in fucking with people and gives zero fucks about it. It's just, if he amuses you, he will do it. Like, another takeaway is just have the villain be villainous again. Like, I miss the villainous villains, the ones you love to hate. And sometimes like, I know sometimes it helps to have a villain to root for, but then that makes you hate the protagonist. Sometimes a villain who's just really good at being evil, it makes the movie work. Like, sometimes if you're an evil douchebag, it makes the movie work. Unless you're the Shredder. Actually, no, that's probably unfair. The Shredder was okay as far as I'm concerned, but anyway. That's the video. Those are the takeaways. Again, I had realized that I've only mostly been doing videos on video game characters and comic book characters, and I wanted to do one on an actual movie character outside the FETs. And that is the video. If you've seen the Highlander and you know of the Kurgan, what do you think of the character? Do you disagree with me on the fact that we need to bring back ruthless villains? If so, tell me in the comments. If you agree, vice versa, still the same. Second verse, same as the first, or the same verse, same as the other verse. Tell me in the comments why you think we need good villains again, or villainous villains. Just, again, put your thoughts down in the comments, and have a nice day. Remember, the game was rigged from the start.